Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to House of Bricks Live. I'm your host, Adam House, and today's guest is someone whose story embodies the heart of what this show is all about: testing, failing, learning, and growing. Roger, he's a retired Army veteran who served as a combat medic, infantryman, and truck driver, including time in Afghanistan, before continuing his service with the Massachusetts National Guard and military funeral honors and brigade operations. So after years of service and sacrifice, Roger hit the same wall so many veterans face, and entrepreneurs. We all hit it at some point when the uniform comes off or something we were previously doing. We move into a new season. We come into that question that says, who am I now? What happened next became a powerful story of self-discovery, healing, and purpose. So Roger, welcome to the House of Bricks Live.
Oh, thank you, Adam. Thank you. I'm grateful to be here. Absolutely. I'm grateful to be 6 feet above ground instead of under it. And yeah, it was quite the journey. That's for sure.
That is definitely a positive mindset to start there. At least I'm not underground. So more to go, but up from there, and with that mindset. So let's start with the moment that really changed your story. So you've said things started to shift when you decided to stop isolating and try equine therapy. What was happening in your life before that, and what made you decide to take that step?
Yes, isolation. Before that, there was a lot of isolation. When I retired, there was a lot. I talked about identity. Yeah, I went through identity crisis. Really, just not knowing who I am, and when you go through those thoughts, when you have those thoughts, there's generally things aren't going well in your life. And that's why you have those. When things are going well in your life, you don't really think about things like that. You don't think about, well, what's my purpose and what's my identity and who am I? So I went through this process of trying to figure that out. And, you deal with things like PTSD and moral injury and things like that. And you isolate more and you keep things in, and the more you keep things in, the more pain you experience, and the more pain you have, the more suffering you have. And I tried all sorts of I guess you would call traditional therapies, and they're great things. I still do them today, but equine therapy kept popping up over and over, and my wife kept sharing it with me, and like most good military spouses, she kept sharing that with me, and I guess the universe kind of took over from there, and I decided, well, I suppose it couldn't hurt, and something made me reach out, and I did. I reached out to a place down here in Florida, and I sent an email, and they reached back out that day. And they said, "Oh yeah, we can get you to the next class." And at first, I was just kind of like, "Oh damn, maybe I got to do this." But I had made the decision I was going to go ahead and I was going to do it, and I was going to give it a shot. So I did, and I went, and there were 9 other vets just like me, going through PTSD. I had no experience with horses whatsoever. But I knew I had to walk in there and I had to be confident. And the first time I walked in with a horse, I mean, these horses are 1,200, 1,300 pounds.
Yeah.
And here I am walking in and I'm trying to act confident. That horse looked at me, gave me one look, and he knew I was full of it. And I was like, okay, this is how it's going to be. But it was different. It was like he could see right through me. And I was vulnerable. And I was okay with it. Like, probably maybe the third time I was with him, there was I don't know, there was a bond, there was a trust that was building, and he actually started trusting me, and I started trusting him, and it was a trust that I had not felt in a very, very long time. And now, a horse's heart is probably 5 times larger than a human being's heart. And you can actually feel that energy around you. And that was probably the first healing experience that I felt. And feeling that energy, I started to realize that, maybe there's something to this whole energy thing, because I had heard it before, but that was the first time I really experienced sort of being surrounded by that energy. And that was kind of my first experience. And that kind of gave me, some confidence to explore that a little bit more. And to this day, I actually started going to another program, Michael's Foundation, which is also down here in Florida. And that is very family oriented. And I was able to bring my wife to that program. And that was a fantastic experience, because now she was able to experience this program with me. And it gave us room to grow together, which was amazing.
Yeah, no, I love this. And first of all, I can relate to the horses being able to smell BS. So my wife grew up riding horseback riding and hunter jumper, all that. And was always asking me to go ride horses. Like, I had an experience when I was 11 years old on a horse. Like, it just knew I didn't belong on it. And it was like at some kids camp, right? This thing took off, beeline to the barn, running me up against the fence. That's what set me straight of who was in charge when you're riding a horse. But
Right.
very, very powerful animals. I want to dig in a little bit. What was going on in your life at this time that, made you feel like, hey, you need therapy, your wife's recommending it to you? What was going on?
The PTSD, the anxiety, the depression, it was running rampant through my life. It was controlling everything. And the more I try to control things, the less control I actually had. Alcohol completely took over my life. I was using alcohol to escape. I mean, honestly, I was using, alcohol to kill myself. Honestly, I mean, you go through, and when you do therapy, they send you these checklists and these questionnaires that you got to fill out. And I would always fill them out very carefully, and I would only put so much information on there, and I would qualify it. But the reality was, and that I used it, and I came, if not for my wife, I probably I would have succeeded. Waking up in the hospital and not knowing how I got there, hallucinating. I mean, you name it, and I was there, and I was lucky that she was there to make sure that happened. That was a really tough pill to swallow, and I'd love to say that it stopped me, but it didn't. I did continue on, and I tried everything, really. I tried everything to get through it, and it really wasn't until I experienced, that equine therapy, and then, but not being happy with that, and going more, going forward with that, and really trying to experience more things. I went to Reiki, and somehow I became a Reiki master. And two words that I never would have said, I never would have thought I would say in my entire life. I didn't grow up like that. I grew up very much like probably you and many of us grew up. Boys don't cry, and you want something to cry about, I'll give you something to cry about.
Man, I've heard that one before.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you think about it, and everybody in that era grew up. Even the women in my life, like I remember my mother saying, you shouldn't think like that, or why are you crying, or and I'm thinking, oh, there's something wrong with the way I'm thinking or the way I'm feeling. I'm like, okay, I don't get that, the mixed messages, and then you join the military, and it's kind of more of the same. You know, you held things in and you didn't talk about things. And it wasn't until maybe a couple of years ago where I realized, you know, this is kind of BS. This isn't actually real life. And you realize that all these things that society tells you, and all the things, you know, that you made these agreements about in your life that were given to you as you grew up, and even in the military, are not really true. But you held them dear because that's what you were taught. That's what you believed in. And you never really talked. You know, the other part of equine therapy was, well, now I had a community. So before that, I was isolating, and I'm drinking, and I made excuses, and, you know, and it got to the point, you know, and the more I drank, the more I had the efforts, right? And the more you have the efforts, it's kind of like I didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, and it didn't matter to me that I was hurting people until I stopped drinking. And then I would think back, and I would hold those memories, and I would you know, think about it, and then I fall back into that pattern because, you know, now I'm living in the past. I'm thinking of these people that I hurt, and what I'm doing, and then back to the alcohol, and back to trying to kill myself with it. And, you know, the pattern, and you know, the cycle, just over and over and over. You know, it just kept happening and happening and happening, and until I made that decision that, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to give it everything that I have, and I'm going to do this. You know, until I started doing that, that's when it changed. And that's the only time it changed. And from that, since then, I've looked at every single thing exactly like that I'm going to give myself to this 100%. And that's when it changed. So that's what was happening, you know, during that period. And it was going on for years.
It's great that you have had good people around you. One of the things that you said that I want to emphasize, and what we're doing here with the House of Bricks and really our veteran initiative, is what you just mentioned. Who is my tribe? Who is my unit when I leave the service? Where's my squad that's going to help me and through these tough times? And the short answer is, most of the time, there's no one there. No one's coming to save you. No one's coming to rescue you. And if you don't have good people around you, it often ends, you know, in a bad way. So that's what we want to do with the House of Bricks, is create that connection from the battlefield to the boardroom, like-minded people, growth-minded people, opportunities for investments, learning about startup businesses, you know, and just building that valuable relationship capital. So I don't know if you've watched any of our live events. If you haven't, just say you have anyway, because we're so amazing, everyone. I'm kidding. But one methodology or framework I've really lived by, I didn't know it until I really had to package it for other people, but I've always taken the approach of, why not like start something? Why not take risk? Why not do something that other people may think is possible? And part of that framework is the test, fail, learn, grow. We call it a flywheel, concepts, blueprints, whatever you want to refer to it as. But it's really just a way to approach business, approach life. You got to test, take that first step. That's where a lot of people, they don't even show up. So if you show up, you're going to beat 80% of the people. Exactly. And then most people, when they feel that failure, they're like, I don't like how this feels. I'm not doing this again. And then they go back to their comfortable life. What is moving you to elite status, and when I say elite, it's just a mindset, doesn't mean perfection, is, are you actually able to learn from your failures? And then that's how you grow. And then that iterative process of testing, failing, learning, and growing. Right. Some things will work, some things won't. But at the end of the day, that decisive action actually has, you know, a stress relief on your brain, reduces anxiety. So we are action-oriented people. that's kind of the foundation of the test, fail, learn, grow model.
Yeah.
For you, you were trying to continue in operations after retiring to stay in that mission-driven world.
Right.
What did that look like at first?
Well, at first, when I first got out, I kind of try to stay specifically within that operations framework, right? That's what I knew. That's what I understood. But I wasn't. My heart wasn't all the way in,
Right.
and I was also struggling because, I wasn't dealing with all the mental health piece of it. I wasn't dealing with PTSD. I mean, hell, I couldn't even use the term PTSD. I couldn't even say it out loud. So you're not dealing with that stuff, you can't move forward. So once I started doing that, I got into the healing piece of it. I realized, I'm actually pretty good at this. I'm pretty good at Reiki. I'm pretty good at meditation. Like I actually learned how to meditate, and I actually learned how, I did a lot of spiritual exploration, and I started to sort of bring that to veterans. I both, bringing it to first responders, and I started getting really good at it. But I also didn't want to leave that operations piece of it on the back burner, because you know what, I earned that stuff. I did, I worked, civilian and military, because I had quite a break in service. So, I know how it works on both sides of the coin, and I didn't want to leave that on the table. I had, operations, leadership development, people, change management. It's kind of like, well, don't leave it there. Let's bring it together, right?
Yeah.
So for the individual, it's great, because the individual, it's meet them where they're at, and sometimes in business it is just the individual, but for an organization, I think anybody in business can relate to, if your staff is healthy, your business is healthy, right? That probably one of the hardest things in business is change, right? And if we understand that change is all around us, no matter whether you like it or not, the universe forces you to change. It's there. It happens. So, trying to get them to understand change and how to change is all part of that. It's all encompassing. It's all healing. So for me, I had to, understand failing, and you go out there and you're looking for a job, and, how hard is it to look for a job? And everybody's got an opinion, right? Everybody, and you're changing your resume with every, resume you send out there. And, and Michael, he introduced me to the House of Bricks, and
Yeah.
And thank God for Michael for doing that. I find that I'm always in that learning process, and I try to remain teachable in everything that I do, and that's a big part of this. So, I realized that, I was going to fail, and that's okay. I'm okay with failing.
Yeah. So, well, real quick on this issue specifically, like, what is the test that you took that you were, the big idea or concept, right, to stay in that mission driven world? What was the test you took, and at what point did you realize that translating your military experience to the civilian world wasn't going to go the way you thought it would?
It's not, because in the civilian world, to translate your military experience is super hard. Most civilians don't understand that military jargon, so you have to almost dumb it down, or you've got to find people that understand it. And most companies, I mean, yeah, if you're lucky, you'll find somebody within an organization that gets it and understands it. But you've almost got to sort of say, it's not what. Your military service is just that. It's what you did in the past. What can you bring, to the fight now? What can you bring to that company now? You talk about intent. I talk about intent a lot, right? What is your intent? What are you trying to do? Like, who are you? Right? And I try to, like, my intent is very broad, right? My intent is, well, I want to help people, right? I gave up on trying to find that perfect job for myself. Um, I decided that I was going to create for myself. And that was scary. That was really scary at the beginning, to create for myself, to create this, carve out my niche, carve out my own business. Like, and I'm thinking, like, who am I to do this, right? But it it works for me. And the more people I talk to, and the more people that I get ideas from, and the more I draw from them, I draw that energy, I draw that confidence,
Yeah.
right? And I realize that people are a big part of that next step from fail to realization of, yeah, maybe I can do this. Maybe you know maybe this is part of the learn, right? You don't learn on your own. You learn from people that have come before you. You've been through the failure. You know what it feels like. And if you can, you've been through the test. You've been tested, right? I've been tested in the military. I've been tested coming out of the military and trying to, fit back into the civilian world. And I failed spectacularly. And I went through that learning phase. I'm still going through that learning phase.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question on that. So one of your notes was you discovered you didn't belong in the corporate world.
Yes, I definitely,
because you needed to heal. So that was kind of your takeaway learning here. What did that process of self-awareness and acceptance look like?
Oh boy. So, I spent time in the corporate world before I went back to the military. I realized that endless meetings and the BS of a lot of that stuff, the politics. I'm a pretty straightforward person. I'm going to tell you the way it is. I'm not going to beat around the bush on things. I'm going to treat people like they're actual adults. I'm not gonna play that game. Like, your kid's sick, okay, just get your work done. I don't do things. And you deal with that to a certain extent in the military too. Like, working 80 hours a week for a 40-hour-a-week paycheck. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to feel good about everything that I do. I'm going to feel like, you know what, I'm doing everything that I feel makes a difference, right? I don't mind putting in hours at all. I'll put in 100 hours a week as long as I feel good about it, as long as I feel like it's going to some place that makes a difference. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm putting it in a place where I believe that it makes a difference. And and that's what I mean by, you meet people where they're at. And a lot of times in the corporate world, you kind of walk away and you feel like, all right, yeah, I'm making great money, I'm making six figures, whatever, but oh boy, am I miserable.
Yeah.
Like, and that goes back to that question, like, who am I? Like, isn't there something better than this? And you only have those questions when things are not quite where you want them to be, right? If things were great, you would be having those questions. You know exactly where you stand.
Yeah, it's definitely the difference in generations too. I could imagine asking my dad, like, who am I? He's like, you're Adam, go to work, get a job. Like, I'll figure out who you are for you, So it's human nature. We always err on the side of overcorrection. So I think there is a balance. Like, as men, we need to check our feelings, and as veterans and entrepreneurs, we're hard-headed, and that's what makes us really good at what we do, but it also can lead to collateral damage in the process. So you've talked a lot about different kind of non-traditional therapies, and until you actually do some of these things like the intuitive healing, meditation, equine work, I know probably a decade or so ago, I would have been a skeptic, like, oh, come on, a horse is going to help you, whatever. But for veterans or entrepreneurs or anyone that's listening out there that may be unfamiliar with it or a doubter, like, how do you get them to take that first step?
And it certainly doesn't need to be me, but I mean anybody in this space. But I always offer people, you know what, just reach out to me. We'll have coffee and conversation. Let's just talk about it. Let me give you the ins and outs of it. Most of the time, it for most people, it starts with a session of Reiki, and all that simply means is we're talking about movement of energy within your body. We're talking about your chakras. Everybody's got them. Where and most people they block certain areas of the body, and your body. Years ago, there was a book. It was called "The Body Keeps the Score." Right. So even if your brain isn't remembering things, your body remembers stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. I was in a group, and we're having a group discussion. And at one point, one of the guys reached over and he kind of gave me a little tap on the shoulder. And when he did that, I did not see it coming, and I jumped. I mean, I jumped, and I thought, where did that come from? I did not see that coming, and I wondered why that happened. And I brought it up to one of the counselors, one of the therapists, and we explored that a little bit. But your body holds these things, and when you break it down into your body and your chakras, and there's an area called the sacral, and that's generally in sort of your gut area, and that's where you hold your trauma in your life, and that's where most people block. Because that's that sensitive area. That's that vulnerability, and we don't like to be vulnerable. Newsflash, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm careful where I'm vulnerable. Right? I'm careful where I share that, but I do open up. I'm more vulnerable than I used to be. I used to hold everything in, and I generally felt it in my gut. I would feel it. So the movement of energy isn't new. It's been around for 5,000 years. I mean, it's a Eastern practice. It's been around forever.
Yeah,
it's not new. A lot of times it moves into meditation, and the thing with meditation is that people give up on it too quickly. They have this thought in their head like they're supposed to stop all the thoughts in their head, and it's like, well, no, I mean, you got to realize that the average human being has 70,000 different thoughts a day. You're not going to stop those. Like, all it means is that you're alive. And the only reason why you're complaining about it is because they're thoughts that you don't want to have. Like, if they were wonderful thoughts, you wouldn't be complaining about it, right? Your heart's beating, your liver and kidneys are functioning, you're alive. They're going through your head. It's okay.
For me, the biggest challenge with meditating, like inside of my brain, it's like having a hot dog stand in Times Square. It's just like they are moving and it doesn't stop. So Paul is from my team. He's pushing me to meditate more. So I am trying to develop the discipline. But there's people, what they view as meditation and what it actually is, right, are two different things. They just think you disappear and sit on a cloud and nothing. Just this serene feeling. But
and I totally get that, because I did the same thing, and it was a while. It was probably a couple of years before I actually did it again, right? And I started to actually like listen to what people were telling me. Um, and I do what I kind of call, premeditation, if you will. I know the thoughts are coming, right? I can't stop the thoughts coming. So, what I'm kind of doing is I'm letting the thoughts come in, and I'm just acknowledging them, and I'm literally visualizing baskets in front of me, and as the thoughts come in, I'm just plucking them out, and I'm putting them in the baskets. Okay, I know I need to deal with this, and I just put it in the basket. And this thought comes in, and it's like, okay, I don't know what this is, and it's not serving me, or it's an absolutely ridiculous thought. So I'm just going to put that in, file 13. This needs to be tossed out.
Yeah.
And after a while, I just sort of settle. And then, once I'm settled, I kind of get to the point where I can now start to ask the questions that I want to ask. Um, Sometimes you get the answers to those questions and you don't want the answers,
Right.
but
Yeah.
you got to be ready for them,
Yeah.
because that's how you learn. And that's how, that's when you kind of, we all talk and we say, well, there's no book to life, right? But there is. It's inside of you, right? There is a manual, right? But it's in there. It's inside, and you got to be willing to take a look at it, and that's not always easy to do, but it's possible. It's possible.
And we could go on for a long time here, but I just kind of, before we get into what you're up to now and current work mission, there was something just in my preparation for the show. So I saw you've conducted more than 3,500 military funerals and even walked in President Obama's inauguration.
Yeah, yeah.
How have those experiences shaped your perspective on service, loss, and purpose?
Oh boy. Yeah. I doing that many funerals. I wouldn't recommend that for anybody. That's
Yeah.
for sure. You do those, and you can't walk away from that, without absorbing grief, sadness. Um, for a while it was hard, because you almost kind of get, I don't want to say immune to it, but for a while you almost, it's almost hard to feel emotion, right? You sort of numb yourself to kind of keep, almost to keep yourself sane, or you wind up curbside to one of these funerals, and you just have this like macabre sense of humor, to keep yourself balanced. But there's nobody really around you. Like I don't remember anybody ever saying to me while I was doing this, hey, are you okay? Right? There was never that conversation.
Right.
It was never there. So I kind of took that with me. And now keep in mind, I did this job on both sides of going to Afghanistan. So the job took a different tone. The second part of that job, I went back to it when I came back. So it took on a different tone. And, then you get to the point where and I did, every high profile mission. Then you start burying friends, you start, KIAs, suicides, overdoses, things like that. And, those are hard to get by because, especially with suicide and even overdoses, you see what it does to families, and you see, how they deal with it. You see, KIAs, and, these are young kids, and you see them in the casket, And there are parts of my uniform that are with some of these kids, because they came back with pieces missing from their uniform. And um, we never said anything because we were silent. We never talked. We just did our job. That's what we
Yeah.
did. Um, and it's hard to see what it does to families, and you almost have survivor's guilt in some ways,
Yeah.
because you see this kid, and at the time of doing it, now I came back in at 36 and I joined the infantry. I don't know what I was thinking, but I did. Um, you know, um, and so I'm older than 36 now, and I'm seeing these kids, and
Yeah.
it's hard. So yeah, I mean, it definitely shaped my thoughts in terms of loss. And I think about it now, and in the last 2 months, there were two soldiers that, one that I worked with closely in funeral honors, and one that worked for me in funeral honors that that passed. And they were young. One was 40, the other one was 32, and that was in the last 2 months. You
Yeah.
know, it's terrible. It's still an issue. Suicide is still an issue, and I've become an advocate for veterans. I don't want to see them deal with the same things that I've dealt with myself. So I do put myself out there, uh, and let them know that I'm here. Um,
Yeah, I mean that sheer volume of funerals, right? And then the things, it's not like the funerals were things that you could relate to, right? From your own personal experience, your own struggles with alcohol, like, so that had to be a constant uh, track in your mind, like, hey, I could be here right now, or maybe I should be here. Those kind of things, when you're around it and you're struggling. So, and I didn't do this at the beginning of the show, but first of all, I want to thank you for your service, all you're doing to give back and continuing your mission. So today, tell us what you're up to today, your current work, your mission, and the vision you're really bringing healing to veteran and first responder communities.
Oh, yes, and I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. So today, yeah, I'm trying to bring that hope for healing. It's there, and it's waiting for veterans, first responders, really anybody. They can learn to do this. It's there, and it's there for them. And they can do this for themselves. For me, I try to bring that healing to them in any way I can, and whether that is through Reiki, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through connecting them with other veterans, depending on whether it's. So when I was going through my healing process, we developed. We have this long list. I mean, it's pages long of different organizations that can help, from
Mm-hmm.
financial to um, you know healing organizations like equine therapy, things like that.
Right.
So
Right.
we developed, between our wife and I, and my wife is also in the helping military spouses. She went through a lot with me. She put up with me. So if anybody deserves some kudos, it's hers for putting up with me.
Of course.
Um, so for me, it's from the advocacy side. I'm trying to give back to them in any way I possibly can. From the business standpoint, using that healing and offering this healing to people through Reiki meditation, and in some cases it's spiritual exploration, whether it's going to Hindu. I wouldn't call myself a religious person by any stretch. But I am a spiritual person, and I follow it wherever it leads. Buddhism, Hindu, uh, Native American, which I tend to be very close to. Um, but also, if you can sit with somebody in empathy and compassion, that's important. You know, you know, the Dalai Lama said that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. you know, you don't have to suffer, you know, and that's what I want people to understand is you do not have to suffer, but you have to work through that pain so you don't have to suffer, you know, and working through that pain is hard. And sometimes you need to sit with somebody to do it. And I'm just telling people, I'm one of those guys that is willing to sit through that with you in order to get you through that suffering, you know, whatever that happens to be. So, you know, you come and have coffee and conversation with me, and we're going to figure that out one way or another. We're going to figure that out. We're going to get you to where you need to be, whether that's figuring out what your intent is, no matter how broad it is. And mine is specifically broad for that reason, which kind of brings my mission wide. So that allows me to help more people. You know, everybody wants mine to be very specific, and I'm like, it's not specific, and it's not going to be specific. Right. You know, even my wife wants me to do that. Well, yeah, but on LinkedIn, I'm like, so what about LinkedIn? Like, it doesn't have to be like.
Well, and how people got to where they are, there isn't a recipe to get them to where they want to go, because their experience to get there they're all different. No one lives the same life, right. And where you want to go, no, people may have some similarities in their destinations, but everyone's going to take a different path to get there. So there isn't a cookie cutter structure. There's a framework I'm sure you follow through, but understanding their frequency that they're operating on, and you connecting with them, the energy you talked about earlier with the horse.
Yeah, absolutely.
With equine, it's just there's energy. It's motion back and forth. It's an exchange. And then that connection is, like you said, is to kind of get them out of that suffering. The way I view suffering is you're stagnant. You've accepted where you are, and you're just, this is it. Whereas working through the pain, there's a process, but there's an outcome at the end of the process that puts you in a better place. So as we look to kind of wrap up here, like on a personal level, when you think about purpose now, like, what does that mean to you?
Purpose now. The way I look at things now is I try, like I think I said this before. I'm trying to remain as teachable as possible. Even, I'm still connecting with people, through LinkedIn and just meeting in person. I mentioned Michael's Foundation. I still invite people up there, even if they're not veterans. I invite them up there because they know a veteran, or they're going to run into a veteran. Bring them there. Let's talk to them, especially military spouses, because they're the ones that are going to get the veterans there.
Right.
Right. And once they get there and they get them to me, I can convince them to stay a little bit. Expanding my consciousness is a big part of this as well. Expanding, what I understand of the world and what I understand of me. 90% of the world is not going to work the way I want it to work, and that's okay. It shouldn't, because that's not what I can control.
Right.
So I see everything inwardly, and what I experience of the world is what I experience, and I just try to give that back and try to, give that to other people, and hope that they experience things from within and realize that, you can control your light. That's your light. You can control it. You can bring it, and you can sit in anger, but you got to realize you don't have to sit there. You can move it to the room that has, happiness. I watched an interview with he was a Buddhist monk, but they asked him, are you happy? And he said, well, that's a tough question, because I'm not looking for happiness. I'm looking for peace. And I thought that was really profound, because that's always how I've looked at it. I'm just looking for peace. That's what I want in life. I just want peace. And if I can find that, and that's what I find every time I go to the barn and I round the horses, I find peace. The tornado in the head slows down, and it kind of lets me enjoy what I'm doing. Peace. That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah, we're definitely not promised happiness. We're promised the pursuit of happiness, and the more you acquire in life, the more it requires from you. It's not about getting more things. It's about the pursuit, the journey, not really in the achievement or the destination that's going to bring contentment is a better word than I think happiness. It's so relative to your own feelings, and it can change by the moment. And when you get things you think will make you happy, we both know this, it falls short and fades very quickly. But listen, I want to thank you for your service, for joining us here on the House of Bricks Live. Anything you can do to help us spread the word to veterans, entrepreneurs. Our goal is to provide that platform for people to share their story and inspire other people. Veterans have great stories and things that they accomplished in the service, but even more importantly, things they're going to do after. And so we're just, again, trying to bridge that gap and create a platform and space. So if people want to get connected with you, obviously they can find you on LinkedIn. Paul will put your website information in the show notes, but anything you want to close us out with today here and leave our audience with?
I'm just grateful to be here. I'm grateful to bring the message. People are so capable of so much. I've seen it in veterans, all the time. I just want people to know they're not alone. They are not alone. And you're capable. It's within you. You can do this. Don't do it alone. Reach out. My hand is out to you. Reach out.
I appreciate that. And again, I'm the last person to ask for help, but and when I do, it's usually too late. But hey, man, there's nothing wrong. And what I had to change my mindset is, as much as I like to help other people like to help you as well. So you're doing them a disservice by not asking for help, because they have things that they may have accomplished or overcome in life that they can help lead you through, and vice versa. So want to thank you again for joining House of Bricks Live. For those of you watching, make sure you keep an eye out for future episodes. We've got great veterans scheduled throughout the month of October. Some athletes coming on, so just continuing to build the House of Bricks Live in our audience. But Roger, thank you again for your service and joining House of Bricks.
Thank you so much. Everyone.